Flung a forbidden glance. Eli's ship shook in the sky as fire chased behind him. Smoke filled the cockpit and sparks flew from broken wires. His hands gripped the controls tight, while alarms screamed around him. He was running low on fuel and hope. A final burst from the engines pushed his ship through the clouds of the strange alien moon. Below was a green and silver jungle glowing under two suns. He had no choice but to crash. The ship slammed through tall trees and landed hard in a clearing. Silence followed. Eli opened his eyes and coughed. His head throbbed, and the windshield was cracked, but he was alive. He grabbed his tool bag and stumbled outside. Everything around him was glowing and strange. The trees whispered even though there was no wind. The flowers hummed softly in colors he could not name. He had landed on a restricted world. He knew it from the moment he saw the sky glowing red and gold. But he had no signal, no contact, and no way off. He had to survive. He moved through the trees searching for water or shelter. But instead, he found something else. Voices ahead soft and musical, unlike anything he had heard. He pushed through a wall of vines and stopped. What he saw froze him in place, in the middle of a moonlit pool. Ani was a girl. Her skin shimmered like moonlight. Her hair floated around her like a cloud of stars. She was not human. Long ears pointed back, gentle horns curled from her temples, and her eyes were bright silver. Other figures stood around her all dressed. In deep ceremonial robes, they spoke in a language he didn't know. Then the girl raised her arms and her body began to shift. Wings of glowing light spread from her back. Her skin took on patterns like galaxies. It was beautiful and terrifying. Eli stepped back and snapped a twig under his foot. Everything stopped. The girl turned her head slowly and her eyes locked with his. For a moment, neither of them moved. She looked shocked, afraid, and curious. Then the air shimmered behind her as three towering male figures turned toward Eli. Their eyes were burning with rage. They shouted something in their language and reached for weapons. Eli panicked and ran. He crashed through the jungle trees, tearing his clothes on branches and vines. He didn't stop until his legs gave out. He collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping for breath. Somewhere far behind, he heard the alien brothers searching, shouting, hunting. But they didn't find him. Not yet. Back at the sacred pool, the girl stood frozen. The ceremony was broken. Her brothers returned furious and wild. One of them shouted that the human must die. Another said their family honor was destroyed. But the girl, Elira, stood quiet. She touched her chest, where her heart beat fast. She had never seen a human before, not like this. Not one who looked at her with fear, but also wonder. He didn't scream or laugh or attack. He just looked. She whispered a word. None of her brothers heard. Different. That night, while the others prepared to hunt the human, Elira stood alone by the pool. She stared into the water where his reflection once appeared. And then quietly, she whispered again. If he saw the sacred form, he must be silenced. Her eyes filled with tears. But not by death. Her voice broke. There's only one way left now. She looked up at the stars, then wiped her tears and stood tall. If I marry him, the law will protect him. But if he refuses, my brothers will tear him apart. And far away in the jungle, Eli sat under a glowing tree, unaware of the choice that had just been made for him. His fate sealed by a single forbidden glance. The alien law of blood and bond. Eli sat near the wrecked ship, trying to repair what he could with broken tools and shaky hands. He hadn't slept, and his nerves were raw. Every time a branch snapped in the jungle, he flinched, thinking the tall alien brothers had found him. The girl's face still haunted his mind. Her glowing eyes, the soft shimmer of her skin, the strange sadness in her expression. It wasn't just beauty. It was something more, something sacred and secret. and he had seen it all by accident. He hadn't meant to spy, hadn't even known what he was walking into. But now he was trapped on a moon. He shouldn't have been unmarked by beings who might kill for honor. His stomach growled, but fear kept him from moving far. He stayed quiet, alert, waiting for his comlink to pick up any signal. It never did, unknown to him. Alira was already moving, through the jungle, silent and fast. She wore no robe now, only a simple travel wrap around her shoulders and a hood over her silver hair. She was royalty. Yes, but now she was something else. Desperate. The law was clear. If a foreign male sees the sacred transformation of a Zinthari noble maiden during the ascending rite, then one of two paths must be taken. Either the intruder must be executed by the family, or bonded to the girl in a binding union of blood and spirit, to protect both family and bloodline. She hated that law. She had always hated how her fate was tied to rules written before she was born. But now that law was the only shield that could save the human, and in a strange way, it felt like fate. She found his scent near the crash site and followed it. She slowed when she saw him sitting by a fire of broken ship panels and glowing blue vines. He hadn't heard her approach. She stood watching for a long moment, her heart beating fast. He looked so tired, so lost. Then she stepped out. Eli heard the movement and spun around, grabbing a wrench, but he froze when he saw her. She held up her hand slowly and spoke in shaky English. I come in peace. He lowered the tool, but didn't relax. You were at the pool. She nodded. Yes. And you weren't supposed to see. Eli swallowed and took a cautious step back. I didn't mean to. I swear, I was just looking for water. Her eyes softened. I know. But now things are not simple. She walked closer slowly and sat on a rock across from him. Her eyes shimmered in the firelight. There's a law among my people, an old one. If you see a royal girl's true form during the ascending rite, you must either die or become one with her. Eli blinked, not sure he understood. Become one. She hesitated, then whispered, bonded, mated, married by our rights. Eli stared in shock. That's insane. I didn't even know what I was seeing. But my brothers don't care. They are hunting you now. Eli, they will kill you to protect our family's honor. He stepped back again. And you're just here to tell me that? No, she said firmly. I'm here to give you a choice. He looked at her, confused and wary. She stood slowly and reached into a pouch, pulling out a small glowing crystal. It pulsed with soft white light. If you take this crystal and accept the bond, they cannot touch you. The law will protect you as my chosen mate. Eli laughed bitterly. You want me to marry you just to survive? She looked down, then up again with wet eyes. No, I want you to survive. Because I saw something in you. You ran, but you didn't scream or curse or throw stones. You looked at me like I was real. She stepped forward and held out the core crystal with shaking hands. This isn't about love or fate or fairy tales. It's about life or death. Eli looked at the crystal, then at her. She was alien, strange, and dangerous, but also not a killer. She was scared too, maybe even more than him. He didn't take the crystal. Not yet. Instead, he asked, what happens if I say no? Her hands lowered slowly and her voice broke. Then I will try to stop them, and I will fail, and they will rip your heart out by morning. Eli was silent. Then, finally, he whispered, tell me what this bond means. And Elira took a long breath and stepped closer. And as the jungle watched silently, and the stars blinked above, she began to explain a bond that could save him or destroy them both. The bond of survival. Elira's voice was soft but steady as she explained. The Bondali sat still watching her as the firelight danced on her alien features. Her silver eyes glowed with emotion and fear and something he couldn't name. She held the crystal between her hands like it was alive, pulsing with light every few seconds. The bond is ancient, she said. It ties two souls together with the approval of the ancestors and the sacred flame. It's not just words or a ring like your kind uses. It's deeper. Eli frowned, trying to understand. You mean like a mental link? She nodded slowly. Yes. I will feel what you feel. Hear your thoughts at times and you'll sense mine. Our lives will be joined. His heart raced at that permanent connection with an alien stranger. It felt like a trap, but also like a miracle. He had no idea what to say. She continued, My brothers would never break the law of bond. No Zinthari can. If you hold this crystal during the rite, and I offer my vow, you'll be marked by our ancestors. No blade can strike you from my bloodline after that. Eli looked at the glowing crystal again. His hand twitched, but he didn't reach for it. I don't know you, he said honestly. You don't know me either. Why would you tie your life to mine? Elira looked away, then answered with something that surprised even her. Because when you saw me, you didn't laugh, or run in terror, or call me a monster. You looked at me like I mattered. She met his eyes again. Most suitors in my world treat me like treasure or tool, or something to conquer. But you saw something sacred and didn't take it for power. You just ran. She smiled faintly. I liked that. Eli rubbed his forehead, trying to think straight. This was insane. He had been a ship mechanic, drifting through empty sectors, doing repair work and odd jobs. He never thought he'd end up stranded on a forbidden moon, facing alien nobles and death. Now a royal girl wanted to bond their souls to save his life. It sounded like a dream or a curse. Still, the alternative was clear. Her brothers would find him, and they would not talk. They would not give him a second chance. Only one offer stood between him and a brutal end. He looked at her again. There was no trick in her voice, no hunger for power, only fear and strange hope. All right, he said finally. I'll do it. I'll take the bond. Her breath caught. Then slowly, she stepped forward and knelt beside him. Then hold the crystal with me and repeat after me. Eli placed his hand on the glowing stone. It warmed instantly under his touch. She began to speak in her native language, words that flowed like wind and water. Then she whispered the English translation, one phrase at a time. I give my breath, my fire, and my truth to you. Eli repeated slowly. I give my breath, my fire, and my truth to you. I accept your path as mine. From now to the stars beyond. He echoed her. I accept your path as mine. From now to the stars beyond. Our fates are bound, and the flame knows our names. She looked into his eyes, and he finished the vow with her. Our fates are bound, and the flame knows our names. The crystal flared with bright white light that lit the trees all around. The leaves shimmered, and a strange hum filled the air like a distant song. Eli gasped as something tugged at the back of his mind. A warmth, a presence. Elira closed her eyes and smiled through tears. It is done. Eli let go of the crystal and fell back slightly. He could feel her emotions now, not fully but enough to know she was scared and relieved and tired all at once. You okay? He asked. She nodded. He took a deep breath. Not sure, but alive. I think. Then a sound broke the moment. A distant howl. Her brothers were nearby. They're close, she said quickly. standing. They'll smell the right on you. They'll know you're under bond. But that won't stop them from testing you. Eli stood too. What kind of test? She gave him a serious look. Zinthari males don't believe in soft words. They may challenge you to prove you're worthy of the bond. Mentally, physically, even emotionally, Eli shook his head in disbelief. You mean I just bonded with you to live, and now I have to fight to stay alive? She looked sad. Yes. And I'll stand with you. But they won't accept me protecting you forever. You must show them that the bond is not weakness. Eli picked up a wrench and muttered, Of course not. Nothing's easy with aliens, is it? She smirked slightly despite the fear in her heart. No. But maybe you'll surprise them, like you surprised me. And with that, the two of them turned toward the jungle, where the sound of armored footsteps grew louder with every passing breath. The Brothers of Wrath. The jungle trembled with the sound of armored feet drawing near. Each step was heavy-filled, with purpose and fury. Eli could feel it in his chest like thunder rumbling inside his bones. Illyra walked beside him quietly, her face calm, but her hands shaking at her sides. They're close now, she said without turning. Eli glanced at her. You, sure, this bond will work. She didn't answer for a moment, then softly, It has to. They reached a clearing with a large stone pillar in the center covered in glowing symbols. Illyra placed a hand on the markings and whispered something in her native tongue. The symbols glowed brighter. Then faded. Eli stood beside her gripping a long metal rod from his shipwreck, like a staff. He had no real weapon, but he wouldn't run. Not now. Branches cracked and leaves scattered as three towering Zinthari males stepped into the clearing. Their eyes blazed like molten silver, their faces marked with ritual paint and fury. One of them stepped forward, taller than the others, his long black hair tied back with a band of bones. He was the eldest brother Theron, and his voice was like stone breaking. You bonded with this outsider? Illyra didn't flinch. Yes, under the law. The second brother growled. He is unworthy. He is weak. The third brother unsheathed a curved blade from his side. I will test him now. Illyra raised her voice firm and clear. You can test his will but not spill his blood without shame. The bond is complete. The ancestors have witnessed it. There was silence. Then Theron's voice again. If he is truly bonded, then let him face the right of standing. If he does not fall, he will be spared. Eli stepped forward, heart pounding. What does that mean? Theron looked at him with no emotion. You stand against the three of us one at a time without striking. You cannot attack. You cannot fall. You must endure. Only then will we know if the bond holds strength or if it is a coward's trick. Eli blinked. That's it. Just stand there while you all try to beat me down. The second brother sneered. If you fall, you die. Eli looked at Illyra. She gave a tiny nod. I'll be watching, and so will the flame. He took a deep breath and dropped his metal rod. Fine, let's get this over with. The second brother charged. First, a blur of silver armor and red cloth. He struck with open palms, hammering Eli's chest, and arms like thunder. Eli staggered, but didn't fall. He grit his teeth and braced his legs. A second blow to his ribs nearly knocked the wind out of him. Third to his shoulder made him cry out, but he stayed standing. The brother growled in frustration and stepped back. The third brother took his place. Faster, more brutal. He circled Eli and slapped the back of his head, then struck his side, then his thigh, then a shove to the chest that almost broke his balance. Eli's legs shook, but he bent his knees and leaned forward, breathing hard. The third brother gave one last kick to the stomach. Eli collapsed to one knee for a moment, but pushed himself back. Up sweat poured from his face, his vision blurred. He looked at Elira and saw her eyes shining with tears. Then Theron stepped forward. The eldest brother looked at Eli with cold fire. He didn't rush. He walked in slow and raised one hand, then slapped Eli across the face. Hard Eli's head snapped to the side, but he didn't move his feet. Another strike to the chest, then one to the side of his head. Eli almost blacked out. He saw stars and tasted blood, but his knees didn't touch the ground. His heart screamed at him to fall, to give up, but he stayed up one more hit. Then silence. Theron stared at him, chest rising and falling. Eli was trembling, but still standing. The fire near the stone pillar flared brighter suddenly. A gust of wind swept through the clearing and the symbols on the stone glowed white. Theron stepped back. The flame has spoken. Elira moved to Eli's side, placing her hand on his back. He stood. She said proudly, "He endured." The three brothers looked at each other, then finally knelt in silence. Their heads bowed low before the stone. Eli almost collapsed again, but Elira held him steady. "You did it," she whispered. "You survived the rite of standing." Eli coughed and gave a weak smile. "Is this how you people welcome all your in-laws?" She laughed quietly through her tears. "You're not dead. That means they accept you now." Theron stood again and approached slowly. He looked at Eli with something new in his eyes. Not hate, not rage, but respect. "You are bonded and worthy." Eli didn't respond. He just nodded, trying not to fall again. As night fell over the jungle and the sacred flame dimmed, the human outsider had earned his place among the Zinthari. But the path ahead was still filled with shadows neither of them could see yet. Whispers beneath the throne. The jungle was silent as Elira and Eli returned to her family's sky hall, a tower of carved crystal rising from the earth like a frozen tree. He limped beside her, bruised and sore, but alive Zinthari guards opened the gates without question. Now, the bond was complete and the brothers had given their silent blessing. But inside the shining walls of the royal stronghold, another danger waited. Not every Zinthari noble believed in the old laws. Not every elder cared about the bond of survival. Elira's mother, the matron of the Zinthari moon court, sat upon a throne of living stone and light. Her eyes were like glass, clear and sharp and unblinking. When she saw Eli, her lips pressed into a line. "You brought him here." It wasn't a question. Elira nodded. He survived the rite of standing. And he is bonded by flame. He is under protection now. The matron tilted her head. "The flame burns." "Zakinat, oh, but so does politics." She stood and walked slowly around Eli, her steps as quiet as smoke. Eli stood still, though his muscles ached. This woman radiated authority more terrifying than her sons. "You are a human," she said coldly, "short-lived, simple-minded, and yet you now carry part of my daughter's soul." Eli clenched his jaw. "I didn't ask for any of this. But I'm not running away." She paused and looked at Elira. "You did this to save him. You should have let the jungle claim him and the past remain untouched." Elira didn't back down. "Then I would have become like you, a woman who obeys the court more than her heart." That struck something sharp in the matron's face, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned to the guards. "Take the human to the lower sanctum and prepare the dream trial." Elira stepped forward, in alarm. "What?" No one said anything about a trial. The matron's voice was ice. "He may be bonded, but he is still an outsider. And outsiders who step into our sacred rituals must pass the dream trial before they are fully accepted by the ancestors. If he fails, the bond burns away." Eli blinked. "Wait. You can just erase it." The matron gave him a cold smile. "If the flame rejects you." "Yes." Elira tried to argue, but the guards had already moved. Eli gave her a tired look. "It's okay. I'll do it. I didn't come this far just to be erased by a dream. They led him down spiraling crystal halls to a circular chamber filled with thick blue mist. A floating disc in the center held an orb glowing with swirling white fog. The guard nodded. Toward it, place your hands, and don't break contact until the vision ends. Eli stepped forward and touched the orb. The moment his skin met the surface, the world vanished. He fell into silence and light. Then, into memory. But it wasn't his own. He stood in an endless desert, under a sky filled with moons and shadows. Before him were hundreds of Zinthari ancestors, all tall and glowing like living fire. They spoke in a strange tongue, but he understood them. You are bound to our blood, but are you worthy to carry its weight? He opened his mouth to answer, but his voice vanished. Instead, he was shown visions, Elira as a child, trapped in a storm weeping alone until her mother's cold hands pulled her away. Elira during her first, right trembling, before a circle of elders who only nodded with judgment. Then visions of war humans and Zinthari fighting in the past. A Zinthari soldier dragged by machines, a human pilot screaming in regret as he failed to stop it. Eli watched helplessly. The ancestors spoke again, your kind brings ruin, but also mercy. What will you bring? Suddenly he stood before Elira's brothers again. But this time they wore the faces of beasts. They snarled and circled. Then Elira appeared behind them, chained and silent. They screamed in unison. She is ours. She is Zinthari. You are nothing. Eli stepped forward. I'm not trying to take her away from you. I just want to be the one who stays when no one else does. Then he raised his hands. I don't know what fate is, or flame, or bloodline. But I know I will never let her stand alone. The dream cracked, the chains vanished. Elira looked at him and whispered, I believe you. Then the light swallowed him whole. He opened his eyes, gasping back in the chamber. The orb dimmed and the mist faded. A priest stood nearby. You have passed. The ancestors do not reject you. Eli sat back breathing hard as Elira ran in and knelt beside him. You did it, she said through tears. Eli gave a weak laugh. Barely. Your people sure don't make anything easy. Elira smiled and leaned her forehead to his. Nothing sacred ever is, but in the shadows of the court halls, someone else was listening, and they were not pleased the human had survived again. Shadows of the Moon Court. The stars above the Zinthari sky hall shimmered cold and distant as Eli stood on one of the tall crystalline balconies, staring into the alien night. His body still ached from the dream trial, and his mind felt like it had been dragged across centuries. But he was still alive, still bonded, still by her side. Elira stood silently beside him, her fingers gently touching his bruised arm, drawing warmth into his skin. She hadn't said much since he returned from the sanctum, but her presence was steady, reassuring. The dream trial changes people, she said softly, her voice almost lost in the wind. Some don't come back at all. Others forget who they are. Eli glanced at her. I remembered you, every time, no matter what they showed me. That made her smile faintly. But her smile faded quickly as the echo of footsteps approached, behind them. It was Theron, her eldest brother. He wasn't wearing armor this time, just a ceremonial cloak. But his expression was unreadable. The court will meet at dawn. Theron said quietly, some of the elders demand the bond be undone. Elira's face tightened. They have no right. The flame accepted him. Theron nodded slowly. They know that. But it's not about the flame. It's about power. Eli crossed his arms, exhausted but defiant. So, what? Some old aliens in fancy robes don't like a human in their bloodline. Theron gave him a hard look. No, they fear you. Eli blinked. Me? You survived the rite of standing. You endured the dream trial. You carry the mark of bond without being born to it. The court thinks that if the flame favors you, it might favor others. Outsiders. That terrifies them. Eli looked at Elira, then back at Theron. So what happens now? Theron sighed. Now. They will try to remove you another way. Elira stepped forward, anger in her voice. If they touch him, they won't. Not directly. Theron interrupted. But someone is moving in the shadows. Already, the servant who lit the trial flames was found unconscious. Poisoned. Eli tensed. They're trying to scare us. Theron nodded. And if fear doesn't work, they'll make you disappear in the night. Elira's voice dropped. We need to leave. But Eli shook his head. No. I didn't come this far just to run again. He stepped forward. If they want me gone, let them come. I'll face them the way I've faced everything here. On my feet. Elira looked at him, pride shining in her eyes, but also deep worry. Theron placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, strong and firm. You have courage, human. That alone gives me reason to stand with you. He paused. But if this is to be done, right, we cannot just defend you. We must give the court no choice but to respect the bond. Eli raised an eyebrow. And how do we do that? Theron's lips curled into the smallest hint of a smile. We show them what it means to carry the flame. The next dawn, the moon court gathered in the high hall. Massive glowing pillars surrounded the central platform where Elira and Eli stood side by side. Elders in layered robes with jeweled antlers and shimmering cloaks sat in curved rows above them. The matron, Elira's mother, presided silently at the highest seat, her expression unreadable. An elder rose. This bond was forged without consent from the court, without our guidance. It threatens tradition. Elira stepped forward before Eli could speak. The flame accepted him. The bond is real, and I chose it, not by law alone, but by heart. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another elder stood. Even if accepted, it is dangerous. Humans do not live long. They cannot lead. They cannot serve the flame in full. Eli raised his voice now. Then judge me by action, not age. I came here by accident. I could have run. I could have begged. But I stood before your warriors. I endured your ancestors' visions. I didn't do it for power or glory. I did it for her. He looked at Elira. And if you believe the flame speaks truth, then let it speak one last time. A hush fell. Elira pulled out the crystal from the night of the bond and held it high. If the bond is false, let the flame fade now. The crystal pulsed once, then again, then glowed bright white, lighting the entire hall. The silence broke, with gasps. The matron slowly stood, her gaze fixed on the light. It speaks, she said at last. The flame favors the human. We will not deny it. One by one, the elders bowed their heads. Elira exhaled deeply and clutched Eli's hand. The court's judgment was done. But in the far shadowed corners of the hall, a cloaked figure turned and slipped away silently, leaving behind a faint trail of black mist. For not all had bowed, and not all flames burned with peace. Fire in the shadows. The celebration should have been a time of peace. The crystal halls of the Zinthari Sky Hall shimmered with soft lights, and floating orb songs echoed through the air in languages older than human memory. Elira stood beside Eli, beneath the sacred flame, her hand resting gently in his. Her ceremonial robes glowing with threads of silver and violet. He wore a high-collared tunic stitched by Zinthari weavers, still stiff around the shoulders, but the look in his eyes wasn't discomfort. It was all he had survived everything. He had been bonded, tested, judged, and accepted, or so it seemed. But not everyone had bowed to the flame's will. Not everyone had accepted the bond between human and noble blood. And that danger, quiet, patient, and bitter, was moving again. From the edge of the upper sky hall, a cloaked figure stepped into the wind. Her name was Vasari, a distant cousin of the matron and a traditionalist who had once been considered for Elira's position. She had watched everything from the shadows, and she had waited now. She whispered a dark word and drew a thin dagger from her robe, glowing, faintly with forbidden marks. It wasn't meant for killing. It was meant for severing a bond, shattering it by striking the heart of one bearer in a place of peace. She descended silently down a servant's path, avoiding light, avoiding flame. She knew exactly where Eli would be. The feast had ended, and he had slipped away to the Skybridge garden to catch his breath. That's where she would strike. Eli stood under the silver trees, looking at the stars even after everything. This place still felt like a dream. The bond pulsed gently at the back of his mind, like a quiet second heartbeat, and he could feel Elira even when she wasn't near. Her thoughts weren't words, just emotions, comfort, warmth, hope. He smiled faintly and leaned against the smooth trunk of a glowing tree. Then the wind shifted. He heard it too late. A blur moved behind him. Then pain exploded through his back as the dagger pierced his skin just above the left shoulder. He shouted, spinning around, catching a glimpse of a masked figure pulling away. The dagger wasn't deep, but it was burning inside him. Not fire, not poison, something worse. He dropped to his knees as a white-hot pressure spread across his chest, as if something inside him was being torn apart. Elira felt it instantly, wherever she was in the sky hall. Her breath caught, and her hands went to her chest. The bond trembled violently. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Vasari raised the dagger again, chanting, softly, "You were never meant to carry the flame, outsider. Let it return to the blood where it belongs." But before she could strike again, a burst of energy knocked her off her feet. Elira landed between them, eyes glowing bright with fury and terror. "You dare use bond-breaking poison in the sacred halls!" she screamed. Vasari hissed and lunged again. Elira caught her wrist and twisted. The dagger clattered to the floor. They struggled, robes whipping in the wind, energy crackling around them. Eli lay gasping, clutching his chest. His vision blurred. Bond. He could feel it tearing at the edges, not gone, but wounded, weakened. He reached toward them, but his arm fell limp. Elira threw Vasari to the ground and pressed a hand to the other woman's forehead, muttering a binding spell. Vasari froze as light surged from her eyes. Then she collapsed unconscious. Guards, arrived seconds later, drawn by the flare of bond energy Theron pushed through them, saw Eli on the ground and lifted him in his arms like a brother. "Get the healer!" Elira shouted, holding back tears. "The bond is fractured." In the healing chamber, hours later, Eli stirred awake. Elira sat by his side, her hand wrapped around his. "You're here," he whispered. She nodded. "They tried to break us, but they failed." He looked into her eyes. "I thought I was going to vanish. I could feel the bond unraveling." She leaned in closer. "You held it together. Even while poisoned, you clung to it. I felt you." He smiled weakly. "I'm stubborn like that." The matron entered quietly behind them. She looked at her. "Daughter," then at Eli for once. Her voice was soft. "The court has sentenced Vasari to exile. No one will challenge your bond again." She stepped closer to Eli. "And I was wrong. You are not just human. You are flame-forged." Eli chuckled. Faintly, "I just wanted to fix my ship." Elira laughed through her tears. "Now you're fixing my whole life instead." He looked at her. "And you're more than I ever thought I'd find among the stars." Outside, the flame above the sky hall pulsed again, bright, whole, unbreakable, and beneath, It, a human and an alien girl, bonded by accident, kept together by choice, watched the stars rise together for the first time as equals. And more.